That's part of what I also call emotional intelligence, making the right choices at a very young age, because the consequences are dire. I go to my father in that living room after all of this happened, and I was expecting Bhavesh for him to tell me, no, Fabiana, don't you worry, nobody's gonna die. Instead, he looked at me and he goes, oh, we're all gonna die, so don't worry about it. Worry about what you're gonna live for. Some things are worth dying for. And for everything else, you need a plan. A lot of people go, oh my God, the things you had to leave. And I tell them, I'm much better for it. I'm stronger, I'm wiser, I'm confident in my abilities. I have skills that people take a lifetime to develop. I had to develop real early. I don't know if I've seen something or if was aware of something. That's when you start developing your instinct, your emotional intelligence, your situational awareness. I knew I could continue to trust my instinct, that everything I had lived so far and experienced so far had prepared me, gave me enough elements to make a decision and be comfortable with the outcome. Leaders that are most successful today are able to make decisions with limited information. That's what it is, because it's all about people and it's all about the intentions. Generally, you see signals. People give signals all the time. People choose not to see it. Corporate America, very predictable. There's signals everywhere. If you don't see the world, if you don't understand how other people live, how other people work, if you don't understand, then you're afraid of it. Anything you do consistently, it's a security risk. It's the only way to survival, because survival is a mindset.
This is the Business Philosopher with a New Podcast. I'm your host, Bhavesh Naik. A theme we often explore on this podcast is when we tap into the humanness of our people, we can build high-performing, self-sustaining organizations that can stand the test of time. A fundamental way to build a strong organizational structure is to strengthen the relationship of its people with those who are both inside and outside of their organization. Situational awareness and self-awareness play a huge role in building and maintaining such relationships. The guest I have for you today brings a refreshing and deeply experiential perspective to this idea of situational awareness. Fabiana Leserca-Allen is the author of Crisis Capable, which is about building your capacity to survive and succeed in every environment. Her book draws on her experience growing up in Argentina during a military dictatorship and her 30-year-old career as a C-level executive at Fortune 100 companies. Her book aims to help readers build the skills that they need to navigate personal and professional crises by drawing on their intuition and emotional intelligence. I am pleased to have you on this podcast, Fabiana.
Thank you. Good morning, Bhavesh. It's such a pleasure to be here. You have written and spoken about this subject, and we have a very similar experience. You growing up in India, I growing up in Argentina.
Yes.
And really understanding that knowing what's happening around you, it's a matter of life and death where we come from.
Quite literally, right? Yeah, there are actually TikTok clips of people trying to cross a street in Mumbai, in India. If that's not situational awareness, I don't know what it is, right?
And exactly that, we live or we grew up or we were born in societies that were very hierarchical, that were with different rules and different ways of doing things. And if you don't understand that and you're not aware of what's happening around you, A, you're in danger. B, you cannot help others if you cannot help yourself. So at a very young age, you learn how to really determine what's good, what's bad, what's happening, and that's part of what I also call emotional intelligence, making the right choices at a very young age, because the consequences are dire.
Yes, yeah. And on that note, your book, Fabiana, it's I'm a couple of chapters into it. I have not finished it, which is a good thing because I'm not very good at keeping spoilers, right? So I won't be giving away the ending. So and what I love about it is that it's full of stories, and you lived an unbelievable life, and the introduction right there, it takes you right into your living room, right, where you grew up. And I believe that's 1970s Argentina,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
So, and how old are you? About 6 years old,
I was
something like that?
born in 1967, so
Yeah.
I was, 5 or 6.
5 or 6.
Young, young.
Yeah, yeah. And you write about this breathtaking thing, and then this tension is so palpable, right? That's what I love about this book, that you created this tension of growing up in this environment, right? And you're sitting in your father is sitting in the living room and having a conversation. He was a very highly positioned man, and very influential, had a lot of connections and things like that. And also he believed in democracy and things like that. So and you would listen to the conversations that he's having and also feeling guilty about it. So, and I don't want to, I want you to tell this story. So please take us back there and tell us about this. And so I suppose that the point there is situational awareness. But what is it that you're portraying there? And please tell the story from your perspective, because I think that's what I want to hear.
Absolutely, Bhavesh. So you and I have talked about these.
Right.
Growing up in places that are rapidly changing, and this is the
Yeah.
world now. I
Yeah.
think you and I have an advantage because our upbringings prepare us for today.
Yes.
And so
Y-
a
Yeah.
lot of people go, "Oh my God, the things you had to leave." And I tell them, I'm much better for it. I'm stronger.
Yes.
I'm wiser.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm confident in my abilities.
Yeah.
I have skills that people take a lifetime to develop. I had to
Yes.
develop real early.
Yeah.
So that living room
Yeah.
was special for many things. This was where the serious conversations take place.
Right. Right.
And so the first one was after a first attack against um, my family. I was
Right.
6 years old.
Yeah.
The lessons from that were that my sister, who was a year younger, who is a year younger than me, is the
Right.
first one to say somebody's looking at us. So
Yeah.
that already tells you she's aware of what's happening. She's
Right.
5. She cannot
Right.
explain it as good as you and I could today, but she
Yes.
already said something's off.
Yeah.
I dream that there's people attacking the house, the
Yeah.
red shadows.
Right.
And so I don't know if I've seen something or if was aware of something, that's when
Yeah.
you start developing your instinct, your emotional intelligence,
Yeah.
your situational awareness.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
Long story short, I go to my father in that living room after all of this happened. We obviously saved ourselves
Right.
by chance, by doing the right thing, by moving fast.
Yeah.
Um, and I tell my father, I don't want to die and I don't want you to die. Because
Yeah.
I had had a dream where he was in a balloon drifting away from me and I could not reach him. And, I
Right.
think that was
Right.
anxiety, fear, at six
Yeah.
years old, normal.
Right.
And I was expecting Bhavesh for him to tell me, no, Fabiana, don't you worry, nobody's going to die. Instead,
Uh-huh.
he looked at me and he goes, oh, we're all going to die. So don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Worry about
Yeah.
what you're going to live for.
Yeah. Oh.
Some things
Oh.
are worth dying for. And for
Yeah.
everything else, you need a plan.
Uh-huh.
And so that was very meaningful, more meaningful now than then, because, at
Yeah.
6, you cannot understand as well.
Yeah.
But it's been a principle that guided me through life. Some things worth dying for everything
Absolutely.
else. What are you living for?
Yeah.
What's your legacy? What's important to you in your life? How are you
Yeah.
making a difference? What's
Sure.
your plan?
Yeah. Yes. What's your plan? I love it. And what a great lesson that is. And something that kind of struck me is that so your sister is about 5, you're probably about 6, right, at this time.
Yes.
And this is basically the age where the psychologists tell us that, our rational mind has not yet developed. And because of that, we are probably more in tune with our environment, what's going on around us, right? And also probably what's going on within us. So the idea is that, every cell of our body, every fiber of our body is kind of dancing with. This is why children are so wonderful to look at, because they are so in tune with everything that's going around them, right? So at that time, we are also in tune with other things. And I think you also talk about intuition a little bit in your book, right? So tell us about your sister. I think there was a story where you were in a weekend house that your
Yes,
family had.
that's what happened.
And, and
That's six
yeah,
years old. Yeah.
right.
So this
Y-
story behind it
Yeah.
was that we were always going to this weekend house. And,
Yes.
if you talk about security,
Yeah.
anything you do consistently, it's a security risk because
Yes.
if somebody wanted to harm you, they know where to find you.
Yeah.
So, in any event, there have been a lot of threats. We were a dictatorship at the time. My
Yeah.
father, who was very close friends with Alfonsine, who ended up being our first democratic president after the
Right.
dictatorship, my father, state secretary of industry in his
Right.
cabinet.
Right.
All those years were very turbulent in Argentina. So we had gotten threats. We
Right.
had security guards walking around the house.
Mm.
So if you can imagine the house um, around it at you, because at the end there was a river. So obviously
Right.
they were going from the river all the way to the river, back and
Sure.
forth, the
Right.
security guards.
Right.
And that night, so we would always eat
Yeah.
looking at the window. My sister and I sits at the table, were
Right.
looking out.
Yeah.
And she's the first one to say, they're looking at us.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
my father assumes it's the security guards.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But in her mind, something, my sister's very, very intelligent and she
Mm-hmm.
thinks a lot in patterns. So
Mm-hmm.
something was off because
Yeah.
it called
Yeah.
her attention. Of course, she
Yeah.
was 5. She could not
Mm-hmm.
explain it like that. But we
Yeah.
talked about it years later, and something must have been out of sync, the way they were
Right.
working or
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
close they were.
Yeah.
And so my parents dismissed it. We went to bed, and I dreamt that there were people coming through a door on the side that came from the pool.
Uh-huh.
And that door had a red vitrol, like red
Right.
glass.
Yeah.
So if you were coming from that stairs, there would be a red shadow on the wall.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I remember thinking, red shadows. I went to my parents. They sent me back to sleep.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
question I always discuss with my father is, did I see something? And I could
Mm-hmm.
not explain it. Because
Yeah.
the fact is, both my sister and I were right.
Uh-huh.
They had come up to the house. They were coming from the river. We did not know it at that time.
Yeah.
But they
Yeah.
came up through the stairs that have the red shadows
Yeah. Yeah.
to watch, to make sure that we were in the house. They wanted to make sure we were there. So
Yeah.
they came up at night and they went back down
Right.
to wait for
Yeah.
the attack, which happened at
Yeah.
dawn.
Uh-huh.
And so the question there is, do you have enough information to say?
Mm-hmm.
Or you're already so perceptive that you
Yeah.
knew something was off. And that's why there's so many studies.
Yeah.
Bhavesh, that's why this is so interesting.
Right. Right.
Intuition,
Yeah.
are you born with it or you develop it?
It's a great question. Yeah.
And I think if you ask your ancestors or
Mm-hmm.
my ancestors, they would tell
Mm-hmm.
you they honor it, they
Yeah.
welcomed it,
100%. Yeah.
they survived with it.
Yes.
So it was very, your great grandmother,
Yeah.
my great grandmother had Indian blood,
Yeah.
and she would tell you
I didn't know that. Yeah.
danger.
Yeah. Yeah.
The birds are singing a different way. Something's flying a different way. The cat's looking different. The silence is too eerie. There were things that told them
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
something's wrong.
Something's off. Right. Yeah.
And now in our society, we were raised to be nice to people, be
Yeah.
kind. You
Right.
don't want to offend them.
Right.
Yet all of us, you go into an elevator and you
Yeah.
feel something's off.
Right.
But yet you don't want to get out of the elevator because what? Are you going to offend people or how's that
Yeah.
going to look?
Right.
And so I think that our society has made it so this is not acceptable. And it
Yeah.
is. It's
Uh-huh.
the only way to survival because survival is a mindset.
Sure. Sure. Right. Survival is a mindset. I like that. And survival is also all of us, everyone who has shown up on this planet, humans and non-humans, animals, birds. Survival is a key element of our existence here on this planet, and that everything kind of revolves around that at a deep subconscious level, right? So, and you said something, you talked about, you've written about this in your book. Why do you think that a child who is 5 or 6 year old can make certain connections and watch certain patterns, but and the parents are seeing the same thing, but they don't see it, or they don't acknowledge it, or they somehow rationalize it away, right?
It's because what you're taught in society.
Yeah.
You're taught to be kind, to not be impulsive.
Yeah.
Look at corporate America. We hire for IQ. What school you went to?
Yes.
What were your grades?
Yeah.
See, I hire for leadership traits.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Would I survive in captivity with you? Would I be kidnapped with you? That tells me everything I want to know.
Yeah.
Bhavesh, for the record, we can be kidnapped together and we'd survive, because it's an attitude. It's how do you work the problem? Are you a team player? Do you trust your instinct? Can you remain calm and think critically? All of that to me is more important than what school you went to.
Absolutely, 100%, because that comes later. That's not a part of your instinctual training, or being who you are. So
correct.
What
and so at 5, I think we all have it. At 5 or 6.
That, and I 100% agree with that. We
and
have
I
it,
think
and somehow
you can
we lose
develop it, or you can diminish it. And it's interesting. I'll give you an example, Bhavesh. So my kids, if they said, I don't want to kiss that person, you don't have to kiss that person.
Right.
Whether it's an uncle, an aunt, whoever.
Yes. Yeah.
They already, like dogs. I love dogs.
Yeah.
They'll tell you who's cool and not cool. They immediately sense that.
Yeah. Yes.
Kids sense it too.
Yeah.
But if you as an adult tell them, no, be nice, this is your uncle, or be nice, this is your neighbor that always brings us bread, you're telling them override your instinct. And that's not good.
Yeah, absolutely. And Fabiana, so then, and there are so many stories, and we might go back to some of those stories, and I do want to, you're being tutored and someone rings a bell, and that story, I'm going to kind of put it away for now. But we're going to go to your career. You've been a C-level executive, and, you climbed the corporate ladder, you got your law degree and beyond. And so, you've been a very successful woman, right, in the corporate structure. So where has this ability to process and be in a certain way that you describe in your book, how has that come into play? Can you point out like a pivotal moment in your career when you made a decision that you thought was the right decision, and for these reasons?
Many, many times. Bhavesh, I think that if you can understand your strengths and your areas of opportunity, and you can understand the strengths and areas of opportunity of those around you,
right?
Then you can successfully lead a team to anything.
Sure.
And that is 2-part. One, intuition. It served me. I started develop it at 5, 6 years old.
Right.
Today, I can tell you with certainty something's off. I like or dislike.
Yeah.
This place makes me feel unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not cool here. Yeah. What does that do to me is you need to research more. You need to pay attention more. You need to open your eyes more. Something's off.
Yeah.
And so that is so important in the world we live in. Corporate America, one of them. And and so I instinctively know somebody's lying to me, or something's off, or I don't know.
Yeah.
This is not the right thing.
Something is all right. Yeah. And there are the YouTube videos out there that analyze people's facial expressions and this and that, and they can tell certain clues. But but as humans, we already had an innate ability to tell if someone is lying or someone is not telling the truth, or
Absolutely.
not being fully forthcoming, right? So
But because we were trained otherwise, I
yeah,
cannot tell you how many women that, for example, been raped I've
yeah,
talked to.
mm-hmm.
And they'll tell you 95% of them would say, something made me uncomfortable. Oh, but
Yeah,
he was a friend, or he was the boss of my mother, or he
right,
was my neighbor. We went to
yeah,
class together. So
right,
you rationalize it because our
yeah,
society had taught us you don't want to be rude. You don't want to
right,
make assumptions. You don't
right,
want to make people feel bad. But see,
yes,
I taught my kids be safe, be smart.
yes, yeah,
You come first. If you
right,
feel something's off, it's off. You can
yeah,
talk, you can think about it, you can gather information,
right,
but
right,
never, never suppress that feeling because
mm-hmm.
that will save your life.
Yeah, quite literally, and yeah, and and some things are probably worse than even dying, and it can save you out of those kinds of situations, right?
I mean, look, we
So
live in us right now
yeah,
without even entering into a political discussion because this is not the forum. We live in a very divided
yeah,
and violent environment
yes, yeah,
where a situation can arise like
yeah,
immediately,
right,
without you even, you know.
right,
And
yeah,
so, in order to be able to react, you need to be
yeah.
alert.
So Fabiana, in your case, you almost had to learn this. You grew up in an environment where, as a child, it's like this heightened sense of awareness that you had to live through, which I think vast majority of the people on the planet probably don't have to live through. So, and there are two spectrums. What kind of find very interesting in your case is that your father was a very influential man. You were fairly, it sounds to me like from the book, if affluent or if not wealthy, right? So you had a lot to lose, right? And and that is often more frightening than being out in the street not having anything, because you had nothing to lose, right? And then you
Correct.
do what you need to do to survive. But here it's fear. So living in this heightened sense of fear, it kind of gives us, it's almost like a spidey sense kind of thing, right? It's like something is off, and you kind of living in there all the time, right? You talk about this. So if you can tell us this story where you were with your at your tutor, and
Yes.
someone rings the bell and says it's your father picking you up early.
Yes. And I
Yeah.
knew, first of all, I flanked math, which was, I know, something would specifically hurt my father, who thought you cannot live life without math. That's why I
Right.
became a lawyer. I can't leave math, but math was not
To
my
prove him
forte.
wrong, right? Right.
Prove him wrong.
Right.
But he also had the theory that if you don't have a plan,
Yeah.
somebody else is going to have a plan for you and you're not going to like it.
Right.
And me going to the math tutor was part of, oh, you don't have a plan, Fabiana? I have a plan for you.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it was attending these classes with
Yeah.
the tutor.
Right.
How I knew it was not my father, it's because I know him so well.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
First of all, he would never take me early out of math class,
Uh-huh.
period.
Right.
Nothing more important than doing your math, Bhavesh. The
Yeah.
world can
Yeah.
change
Right.
because of it. And he
Right.
was a man of patterns.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
15 minutes early, it's not going to help for anything, but she's not going to finish her math problem.
Yeah.
So we're
So
going to
so
pick.
for the context, I think what's happening is that you were at a tutor and you were supposed to be picked up at 6, but instead someone rings the bell at 5:45 and says it's your father
Yes.
here to pick you up, right? So
Yes.
and then you going through this process in your head saying, well, something is off. So sorry, go
Yeah.
ahead.
And,
Yeah.
and as much as I wanted it to be true, because trust me, each
Yeah.
minute in that old teacher's apart math, it
Right.
was a torture. I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
But I knew it was not him because I knew he would never take me early.
Yeah. Yeah.
Part of survival, part of creating great teams, part of all of that is building trust.
Right.
And so you need to know each other and you know how the other person reacts.
Yes.
So I knew he would not pick me up early because
Yeah.
there's no need.
Yeah. Yeah.
In his
Right.
mind, even if there was a terrible disaster, 15
Yeah.
more minutes,
Yeah.
it's not going to make a difference. And
Yeah.
yet it would make a difference for me to finish that.
You're right.
So he would not have come early, but also, and more importantly, these are, the old apartment buildings where you ring the bell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I know that my
Yeah.
father will ring the bell, ring. He would not ring because
Right.
it's part of who
Yeah.
he is, a gentleman. He
Right.
would never ring like he's
Unknowingly. Right.
in a
Yeah.
hurry.
Yeah. Right.
It would have been and so I knew it was not him.
Mm-hmm.
But I was older. I was already experienced. I understood the risk that we were all
Right.
in.
Right.
And I also understood who the players were.
Yeah. Right. Right. So you chose to not go, basically.
Of course.
This fascinates me because you're probably what 8, 6,
No,
10,
I'm
something.
14 there.
Up there, you're 14 years old, and yet you are putting yourself in your father's shoes, and you kind of know the way he operates, the way he thinks, and all this stuff is happening in split second. This is not
In split
a drawn
seconds.
out PhD paper, right? It's not,
No.
it happens quicker than we're having the conversation about it. But you've processed all this information. This is not like him. He won't ring the bell like this. That
Correct.
he's a gentleman enough that he would be very gentle in ringing the bell in a certain way so it doesn't annoy someone. At the same time, he wouldn't pick you up. Having you in a math class is so important to him that, and even if there was something terrible that's happening out there, he would kind of think through and say, well, all right, she's safe at the tutor's house. I don't need to pick her up right now. Let me deal with this here. So that fascinates me. And all of that happened. And you said, no, I don't need to go. And actually, I think, what did your tutor say?
So it's funny because the teacher had been she was like 80 years old.
Yeah.
And she had been my father's teacher. So he's known my father for a lot longer than me.
Yeah.
So she's the one that goes, you can talk. They ring the bell and you can talk.
Yeah.
She comes back and tells me, it's your father.
Right. Yeah.
And I said, well, he's not.
Yeah.
And she says, well, I'm going to go down and check.
Mm-hmm.
So I locked myself in her apartment. She went down and she found out it was not my father.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was
it
was a big lesson for both of us, for her more than me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I knew I could continue to trust my instinct, that everything I had lived so far and experienced so far had prepared me, gave me enough elements to make a decision and be comfortable with the outcome.
Yes.
And I think that leaders that are most successful today are able to make decisions with limited information. That's what it is.
Yes. Yeah. That's an excellent point. With limited information, right? Yeah.
Because, I could have waited there and continue, I could have made calls and I could have, but the truth is you have to make a split-second decision. You have limited information and you have trust that this is the best decision I can make today with the information I have.
Right.
But you are also the type of leader that said, well, I made a mistake.
Yes.
Let's say it was my father.
Right.
I would have, he would have waited 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I would have come down. He would have said, Fabiana, I called you 15 minutes early. We had to leave. I would have said, Dad, I apologize. I was not sure it was you.
Yeah.
And he said, that's great, daughter. I'm happy that you reacted that way because this will save you in the future.
Yes. Yeah. So there's a risk-reward thing going on, right? That the worst thing that can happen here is that your father maybe gets upset with you a little bit. Yeah. In the worst situation, and if the worst that can happen in the other scenario is you can't even fathom, right? It's
correct.
Kidnapping, whatever.
So with certain things you recuperate from, you say, my mistake. Sorry.
Yes. Right. Yeah. You're right. And that's also lawyer thinking a little bit there, right?
But that's also, as a parent, I would prefer my kids to think like that.
Yeah.
One of my kids, and this is not part of the book, but we all seen in America threats against schools.
Yes, that's
And
true.
when she was going to a very good private school, there was a threat against the school. They're locking all the kids down. Well, she leaves the school.
Right.
And she calls me and says, Mom, I'm walking home. Come pick me up whenever you can, because it's far. But the school is in lockdown, and I decided to leave.
Yeah.
And I said, why did you decide to leave? I thought it was very, very, A, courageous, second, brilliant. She says, because I don't know what the situation is. I don't know, they had security guards, but I don't know if this person has other people working with him in the inside.
Right.
Best is to remove yourself from the situation.
Yes.
So I checked that it was safe to leave, and I left.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So I could be upset.
Yeah.
Or I could say, that's brilliant.
That's right.
You're taking charge of your safety and your security, and you're acting.
Yes.
In the best interest with the information you have at the time.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. I want to support that.
Yeah. So, Fabiana, if we look at situational awareness, it's this sort of the term that we're using, situational awareness and intuition, and maybe a little bit of this emotional intelligence, right? We're kind of framing it like that because we need to kind of talk about this in a way that makes sense, right? So, these strategies, what are some of the situations? And you've been an executive for such a long time, and you've been through so many different kinds of scenarios. You've been a lawyer, and you drafted agreements, bringing different parties together, and those are the kinds of things. And I think that relationships are so key to building strong structures, strong organizations, and functional organizations, right? And you've done a lot of that work where you bring consensus and talk to different parties and draft agreements and those kinds of things, right? Could you give us an example of a situation where the situational awareness, the things that we're talking about, comes into play in
every single
career?
Scenario in life, Bhavesh. In every single scenario in life, because it's all about people.
Yeah. Oh yes. Yeah.
And
right.
It's all about the intentions. And I had a law school teacher that said, "There's no violent crimes that just happen out of nowhere."
Yeah. Right.
And generally, you see signals. People give signals.
Yeah.
All the time.
Right.
People choose not to see it.
Yes.
I always laugh at when, I heard a couple times some friends that are like, my husband cheated on me and I had no idea.
Yeah.
And I'm like no idea.
You had signals all over the place, right?
Correct. And you start going,
not to make light of the situation.
No, but the truth is, were you, having the same sexual relationship you had before? Were you happy before?
Yeah.
Were you going out to dinner? No. And I'm like, well, something was off.
Right. Yes.
Or all of a sudden they start working late. All of a sudden they take the calls in a different room. All of a sudden they those are all signals. If you don't want to see it, you don't want to see it.
That's true.
A whole different discussion. Corporate America, very predictable. There's signals everywhere.
Yeah.
Every time. If you can observe people, and if you trust what you observe, you'll see somebody's nervous, somebody's out of their depth.
Yes.
You start knowing when people are BSing. They're like sitting there acting like they know and they have no clue. You start perceiving those things.
Yeah.
You start understanding where the real power comes. I always love your culture and my culture. There's very similar in that the importance of who comes and how you treat men and how you learn about them is so vital to a negotiation. Because generally, the person that you're dealing with, it's not the powerful person or the person making the decision.
Yeah. Yes. Right. This happens in sales situations all the time. Yeah.
So you need to understand the dynamics. You need to understand the culture.
Yes.
You need to understand what things mean,
Right. Yeah.
In my dealings with Indian, and I have a lot of friends and I love it, they're
Yeah.
very, very, very courteous. They'll say,
Yes.
that
Yes.
doesn't mean, yes, I'm going to do it. It means, yes,
Exactly.
I'm
Right.
hearing you.
Yeah.
Yes, I hear you.
Yeah.
I respect you. I'm giving you the opportunity to talk. That doesn't mean you got this.
Right. It's the combination of humility and strong will sometimes.
Correct.
So don't
Don't confuse
misunderstand the
it.
humility for that strong will that's underneath it, right? And
And,
I think
and
that's
the
a
strong
good
word,
combination to have.
I
So
love it.
yeah.
I have a funny story about that
Uh-huh.
because it's the work ethic.
Yeah. Right.
Anybody that left everything behind, somebody asked me once, are you a risk taker? I said, I came to this country alone to
Yeah.
study
Yeah.
by myself in a time where there was no
Right.
this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were writing letters. I
Right.
was young, I was alone, and I made it.
Yeah.
I made it because I have a very strong work ethic. I got
Yes.
great grades. I studied hard
Yes.
because I
Yeah.
figured I'm going to make this sacrifice worth it.
Right.
And so one of my kids went to a private school and
Mm-hmm.
he got a medal for languages, which I thought, of
Right.
course, I mean, thank
Yeah.
God you speak good Spanish with an
Uh-huh.
Argentinian mom,
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the dinner, there was an Indian boy,
Uh-huh.
Rajan,
Uh-huh.
who won every single other medal, everything from violin to math and chemistry and
There's
everything
always
else.
there's always an Indian kid who is doing that, right?
Won everything. And so,
Right.
but what's interesting is the conversation with my son. And I said, well, what's up with, why did he win everything? He goes, Mom, he studies all the time. And I'm like, no doubt.
No doubt, right? You
No
think?
doubt.
Yeah. All right.
It's
Yeah.
not that he was born more intelligent. It's
Right. Yes.
he learned
Yeah.
the strength of
Yeah.
sacrifice, work
Yeah.
ethic,
Yeah.
commitment at a very young age.
Yeah. Yes. That's
And
true.
so he goes, yeah, but he doesn't go out. He doesn't have girlfriends.
Yeah.
And I laugh and I said, well, he's going to be your boss. So you better remember
Possibly.
him and be friends.
Right.
And true, like 3 years later, he looked him up in LinkedIn and the kid was CEO of a startup in
Right.
Palo Alto. So I'm
They call
telling
it
you,
delayed gratification, right? You can delay the girlfriends and all the other gratifications.
they'll come in
They'll come
droves.
later.
But the
Yeah.
fact is, my point here is that you stay true to yourself. You
Yeah.
understand your surroundings. You understand what you're here for.
Yes. That's true.
And you make it happen.
Yeah.
You honor the sacrifices of those that came before you.
That's true.
And
That's true.
you make it work. And that's what happens. And that's where intuition and emotional intelligence came to play.
No, you had to, Fabiana, you had to learn this because you were thrown into it. You were 5 or 6 year old who had to have this heightened sense of awareness all around you all the time because you lived in a very threatful environment, right? And your parents had to kind of protect you, and then they had to talk to you about certain things, and you were aware of all those things. But a lot of us are not raised that way. So,
But I think that's the mistake. And
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt, Bhavesh, but
go ahead.
the world around us is as hostile as my world was hostile to me in Argentina.
That's an
It's just
excellent
different
point.
type of hostility,
Yes.
different type of threat.
Yeah. That's an excellent point. And thank you for interrupting me with that strength. I really like that because I wanted to explore that with you. Now, Helen Keller, I think there's a quote by Helen Keller. It says something like, security is a superstition. It doesn't exist in nature. So in American Western civilization, a lot of that is built on this sense of security, whether you have insurance and, everything is cut and dry. And if I want to get a gallon of milk, I just get in my car and go to the store and get it. These little things are a big deal in some other countries, right? And if you have to go get a milk from a store, it's not always such a straight shot, right? There are certain things, strategies that you have to implement, certain things that you have to be careful about, right? In India, there was a time when there was a guy with a shop where he would sell milk. He could not be there any day, right? Or he could not even show up, or there is between here and there would be, I'm not kidding you, you would meet at least 100 people. You would see them, right, all around you, and you have to navigate through all of that, right? There might be some poop on the street that you have to walk around. There's traffic on the street, and you have to kind of navigate through that. So, that forces situational awareness on us. But when we become like a sanitized environment in the sense of security and safety, we kind of become a little bit, I don't know, bit careless.
Well,
Is that what you're saying?
that
Yeah.
it's an illusion.
Yes. Yeah.
And
right.
the truth is, if you look at the numbers,
Yeah.
we work with crazy people. We work with people under the influence. We work
Right.
with people under the influence of drugs. We work with people that have an unstable mental health situation. We work
Right.
with people that under are pressures that we don't know. We
Right.
work with people that are sick. They're all around us.
Yes.
It's just that we choose not to look, or we choose
Absolutely.
to ignore and suppress
Yeah.
that feeling, because that's
Yeah.
what is most comfortable.
Yes.
You don't want to get out of the elevator because you
Yeah.
just had the feeling that you don't like the person that came in.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's the safest and it's the
Yeah.
soundest decision.
Right.
Worst case scenario, you were wrong. You wait for the next one. Nothing happens.
Right.
Best case scenario, you just saved your life.
Exactly. Some of the situations that I can think of where situational awareness comes into play, we're thinking that, everything it looks great. For example, in corporate environment, negotiating, deal with someone, selling situation is fraught with all kinds of crazy behaviors that people exhibit, especially when they think that you are a salesperson. And, there's blame probably goes on both sides, bait and switch, and there are other things that salespeople do and selling side do, and then the buying side have to defend. So there's a lot of those kinds of communications and conversations happening. Conversations between two colleagues, right? Today we talk about narcissistic personality disorder. That's on the rise. It's a big search term right now. All these terms are becoming common terms, right? Triangulation and gaslighting and all of these things that we kind of now know about. They were always there. So it's probably it's considered a cynical way of thinking, but it's a dangerous world in the sense that
100%.
that we're dealing with people who have certain intentions, and we live in an environment where people everybody wants to win and get ahead and get more money, and they are programmed to think that I do that by doing something else to someone else, right? Being harmful to other people or competing and getting ahead, right? Those kinds of things. So,
well, we also live in an environment where it's very divided, where racism, homophobia, hate towards others, the pressure of not living the dream that you thought you were entitled to, the lack of education. You know that most people around you, Bhavesh, could not tell you in a map where India is. It'd be more like around here.
Yeah. Right. Yes. Yeah.
They say they traveled internationally and they went to the Caribbean once. And if you don't see the world, if you don't understand how other people live, how other people work, if you don't understand, then you're afraid of it.
Yes. Right.
And that's a problem. People have told me the craziest things. So one time, I'm at a dinner party and this guy goes, "Your English is very good." And I go, "Well, thank you. I went to UCLA, law degree from there. I'm sure it helped me." So
and you
I'm
don't
trying
have
to
to
be
talk to me like this, right?
correct. But I'm like,
Right.
okay. So then I tell my kids in Spanish, "Go get your coats." And he looked at me and he goes, "Do they understand?" And I said, "Of course not. I speak funny, they get their coats." Because if I answered truly, Bhavesh, I could have I would have been insulting. I'm like, of course my kids speak
Yes.
Spanish.
Yes. Right.
I'm
Right.
Argentinian. Of course
Yeah.
they speak Spanish.
You're right. Right.
But instead I go, no, I speak funny. They get their coats. It works every time. You'll see. And there they come with a coat, and he goes, wow. And so that's your voter. That's your
Yeah.
corporate America. That's your people you work with.
Yes. Yeah. 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 It's often said, probably a cynical way of doing, saying it, but the humans are the most dangerous animal on the planet.
And so absolutely dangerous.
Yeah.
Because
they're also very smart, and they can use their smartness in a different way.
correct. And so yes, you have to be alert. Going to get a gallon of milk, you have to be alert. You
Yes.
are lured into thinking, oh no, this is safe. Nothing is safe.
Right.
It's safer than other places. There's different types of danger.
Absolutely.
You look at, there's a rise of scams over the phone. People are so lonely. They believe that this gorgeous woman is totally in love with them and would, it's interesting because we don't learn.
Right. That's true. Are there any ways? So someone who has been brought up in this safe-looking, safe-sounding, safe-feeling environment, are there any strategies that you can suggest? Maybe you can pick one or two things from a book or something, or maybe you can probably have a story as to how someone who has been bred and brought up in that kind of environment can pick up some strategies to be more situationally aware or be more self-aware.
Well, I did an excellent exercise with my team.
And
it's about observational skills.
Right.
Look around. Start by looking around you. Describe people.
Yeah.
What is Fabiana wearing today? Well, she has the earrings and this and that.
Right.
And if you can observe and describe, then you are a step ahead to know when something's off.
Yes. Right.
So I took my team to a restaurant where, Brazilian steakhouse, people come in and out.
Right.
And I told them, the security observational exercise continues, be aware.
Yeah.
And so we had hired somebody to come and take a purse. And people had to be able to describe them.
Yeah.
And I tell you, it was around 30 of us. Nobody could tell if it was a man, a woman. People are not paying attention.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
People think, somebody that obviously is not dressed in a suit, obviously not dressed, for business, comes into that room and obviously not bringing meat in their hand.
Yeah. Right.
And they're not looking. That is because we were raised to not look. You are looking at your phone, listening to me. I don't know how people read and walk, for example. I would kill myself.
Yeah.
I don't do anything else but be alert.
Yeah, absolutely. What I found, Fabiana, is that a long time ago, when my kids were young, we started doing some bird watching. I just picked up a book on the whim from. I'm not a bird watcher or anything like that. I do like nature, but so there's a book of birds, right? What they look like and all the picture. It's a picture book, and then we go out to with that book to look at the birds. So if you spot a cardinal, right? And you start to look for it in the book, right? And then you look up, the bird is gone, right? So what I found, my point I'm trying to make is that being in the moment is so important to developing the situational awareness. So just kind of being aware of the surroundings, and then so when you're looking at a bird, instead of being intellectual about it, a better strategy is to kind of take a snapshot, just kind of be in the moment, stop all the processing, and just totally be in the moment and be with that bird in that moment, right? And observe everything you possibly can. And then later, flip through the book and find out, and then the funny thing, we think that we'll forget, but all of the details that we had observed, actually, they come back, all right? And so,
Absolutely.
this is the shape of the beak, and this is the little plume on the head, or this is the red is on only this on this side of the wing. Those kinds of things, right? So, and that the other thing that is you've written a book, I think, writing exercises. Journaling or writing, or I think some of the writing exercises are write about your father, and how his face looked when he was angry with you, or when he was kind with you, and those kinds of things, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Our next book we can write together.
I would love to. Yes.
I think
Yeah.
that's brilliant,
Yeah.
because that's it. Those are the things that you can teach to your
Yeah.
kids, that
Yeah.
you can develop in corporate America, you can develop as an adult, but
Yeah.
observational skills are
Right.
key.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. And Fabiana, is it possible to go too far? And what I'm trying to say is that is it are there any pitfalls to being
There's
is
always
there such a
risk in
thing as being
life.
hyper aware? Yeah.
But if I was gonna err on one side,
Yeah.
I'd
I'll
rather
be
be
on that.
super vigilant than super unaware.
Yes.
Because one is survivable and the other one is not.
Yeah. One of the things we like to get into a little bit here is you had a tremendous career, right? And C-level executive positions, and you've done a lot of great things. Has there ever been a moment when you thought, sometimes we call it the dark night in the soul kind of moment? Has there ever been a moment in your life when you thought that, it was unsurmountable? And the follow-up question is already in the question, which is, how did you, how did you surmount it?
I think there's been times where I said, it's best if I'm not here.
Yeah,
In any
not
in
here
any
meaning,
situation,
yeah,
in any path of life,
yeah,
you have to have an exit strategy.
right,
This
right.
is a line I'm not going to cross.
Yes,
Everything else, let's talk about it.
yeah,
Or
yeah,
let me think about it, let's see. But there's some things that it's a no. So
yeah,
I had those moments, very few, because everything else is a lesson.
yeah, yeah,
You're not always right. You're not always the most intelligent voice.
yeah,
But if
yeah,
you can listen and you can learn,
yeah,
you're
right,
growing. And that's
yes,
what life is all about.
yeah. Could you give us an example of a line that you had not, were proposed to be crossed, but you refused?
Well, for me, it's integrity.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
My word, my
Yeah.
kids when I was young would say, if mommy says it'll happen, it'll happen.
Uh-huh.
My word is very important to me.
Yes.
I would
Yeah.
not cross that line.
Mm-hmm.
Integrity, I would not cross that line.
Yeah.
There's few things in my life
Yeah.
that I would not do.
Yes. Yeah. And give us an example of one thing you would not do.
I would not put my signature in something that I know it's not true.
Yes. Okay.
For everything else, you have MasterCard.
Yeah. For everything, I love that. If someone was starting out, someone who's, let's say, in India or some other country, right, and who lived in this heightened sense of threat, and coming to America or going to any other place where that's not their home, right, and they need to survive and thrive and do well in life, what would be one word of advice that you would give that person, he or she?
I would say embrace it.
Uh-huh.
Don't be embarrassed.
Yeah.
You bring to the table experience that most people don't have.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And
yeah. Yeah.
And thrive in that diversity, thrive
Yes.
in that experience.
Yeah.
Because you went through it for a reason. It made you stronger. It made you wiser. It made you more intuitive.
Yes.
Embrace it. That's what I would tell them.
Absolutely. Wonderful.
Or call me in LinkedIn, however you want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. On that note, what's the best way to get hold of you?
So LinkedIn, you just type my name. There's not too
Mhm.
many Fabiana Leserca-Allens out there. It's just me.
Uh-huh.
So that's a good way. I
Yeah.
always love to hear about different opinions on the book, feedback. This served me, this didn't serve me. So yes, that's the best way to reach out. LinkedIn.
Okay.
It has my
LinkedIn.
email.
Absolutely.
It has my phone number.
Sure. Absolutely. For our listeners and our viewers, I highly recommend reading this book. It's a great read, and I love the fact that you tell stories, but you're also not shying out from the lessons. And I'm writing a book right now, and the struggle is always okay. There's a narration. It's a semi-autobiographical, so there's a narration. But then, do you instruct or not? And if you begin to instruct while you're narrating, then it breaks the flow of what you're trying to do, right? And you've done that really well. That it's a combination of narration and it takes you right there. It takes you in the home where you grew up and all of these things. And then you have lessons, and you also have these gray areas, the little boxes where there's takeaways. So I really enjoyed reading, the book, the portion of the book that I read so far. Right, I have more to go.
Excellent. Well,
So
when you're
highly
done,
recommend it.
let's
Yeah.
have a conversation again, Bhavesh. I'd
Let's do
love
it.
to hear what you thought.
Absolutely, yes. So thank you very much, Fabiana, for coming on the show, telling your story, and sharing all the lessons and sharing all the insights.
Thank you for the opportunity, Bhavesh. I could speak to you for hours. I love your
That's a compliment.
intelligent
Thank you.
questions and the way you present yourself,
Uh-huh.
your
Thank you.
podcast, and the way you help others.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for the compliment. So until next time.
Until next time.
We're still running a recording, and this is not part of the official podcast, but is there anything that could be improved that comes to mind?
You're extremely good and well prepared. In life, you have to kiss too many frogs to get the prince.
Yeah.
You are the prince of the podcast. So
thank you.
I'm happy I went through many frogs. You are well prepared. You know what you're talking about. You asked the right questions. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Thank you so much. So, and if I can use that as a testimonial, I haven't gotten around to doing this, but eventually I will. So.
We can also, get a picture of a frog, and you're the prince. You're good.
I love that. I love that quote. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I'm gonna blush though. The prince and the frog, and I'll show it to my wife, and I'll say,
good.
You don't know what you have here.
You think I'm a frog all the time, but no.
I'm the prince, right?